Everything we discuss will be timestamped in the description below. For our definitive heavy guide, I have over 70 operations with the class and all maxed out weapons. We will go over multiple builds I used with my time with the class, get into using your most important asset, your heavy stance, different ways to spec your Iron Halo, your weapons, which all feel powerful and enjoyable to use, which is great because you have no melee weapon options. So let's go straight into our heavy stance and how important it is for our class. One of our most important tools with the heavy class is our heavy stance. That is by holding down the L trigger with your primary weapon. In essence, it's going to make your primary weapon about 30% better in some sort of way. So you're going to want to be in your heavy stance as much as you possibly can. Now, just very important things about this is you cannot dive or dodge out of your heavy stance, and you cannot use any melee options out of your heavy stance. So if you're holding L trigger down, you cannot use a dodge or dive like you can on other classes, and you cannot attack with a melee option. So the only thing you can do while you are in this stance that will cancel it out is a parry. So I like to map my parry to a back button on my controller with this character. So if I want to really stay in my heavy stance, I never have to release the L trigger. I can just hit that back button, it'll cancel it with the parry, and it'll just go right back into the heavy. Now you can parry the other way to where you're just letting go of the L trigger, hitting parry, and then going back to the L trigger as fast as you can. It'll be the same amount of speed as long as you're fast enough with your fingers. And you don't really have to be that fast, but I just found it like I'm thinking about less if I'm just hitting that one button and just constantly holding down L trigger when I want to utilize that, and mostly you're utilizing that with the Melta rifle. So being able to parry out of your heavy stance is going to be very important to learn how to do, because it's going to keep you in your heavy stance longer, and that is your main objective as this class, is to stay in that as long as you can and really open up as much damage on the enemy before you have to come back out of your heavy stance. So like I said, for me, mapping the parry button to the back of my controller is what helped me do that. But there's going to be different routes for other people. In general, I found the heavy to be the hardest to parry with. I had a lot of difficulties learning the timing of his parries, and really just with the major enemies, I didn't have as much difficulty as I did with the smaller enemies for some reason. The major enemies I was okay, but the minor enemies I was really bad at getting my parries off and trying to utilize them for my extra segments of armor and stuff like that. So I'm sure people are a lot better than me at doing that with this class. It was for Iron Halo, there's a couple ways you can spec this thing. If you're using your multi-Melta, you're going to really spec it towards close range type, have it dealing damage and things like that. But where it really shines is like mid-range with your heavy bolter or your heavy plasma, and it really lets you get in your heavy stance and stay in it for long periods of time and just really open up on your opponents. So it's very nice that way. It also has a very long cooldown. Unfortunately, it is 1 minute and 5 seconds for the cooldown on this thing, and it is up for 15 seconds unless you take a certain amount of damage, and then it dissipates instead. So very strong tool. I wish they would lower the cooldown to about 50 seconds or something like that, but you're using this all the time. It really shines mid-range, and it does eat up a lot of damage from ranged attacks. Alright, for our melee options, very limited as you see right here. The two best, I think, is his stomp, because you can get to it so quick, and it flattens out all minor enemies around you, and you can get gun strikes on them. And then his attack out of his sprint is actually a pretty good distance on that. So those are the two that I use the most, and when I was using these is when I was surrounded by a bunch of minor enemies, because I had a lot of problems parrying minor enemies to get my armor back. So I would usually just ground stomp, look for my gun strike, get my gun strike, and then I would continue shooting after that, and just continuously doing that, or using my sprint and jump to knock back a small enemy and get a gun strike on him that way. So for minors, I used gun strikes when I was surrounded by them to get my armor back, because I had a lot of problems parrying minors. Like I said, you might be better at that, so test it out yourself. Maybe you'll be better at parrying, but for me, minors, I was dodging, and I was using my stomp and my sprint attack. And he does also have a double stomp, but you can really get it off. You hold the RB, and then you let it go, and then hold it again, you'll double stomp. Like I said, very rarely I was able to ever get that off. But this one, you charge this stomp so fast that it is actually a pretty, it's pretty useful. Alright, let's get into our primary options that we have here. We have the multi-melta, we have the heavy plasma, and the heavy bolter. So the multi-melta, basically very good close range. I usually set mine up with the range version so I have a little more range. It gives you a lot of contested health back, so it is very good with survivability, is one of the main things I like about the gun. For our heavy plasma and for our heavy bolter, these are both very, very strong mid-range weapons. That's why I really like this class in general. All three of these weapons, you never feel like you're underpowered, or you never feel bad that you took this weapon over another one, because they are all very, very powerful. Those two, very good at mid-range, a lot of damage. You're always at the top of the range damage list with this character. We will go with the multi-melta first. For this, I usually will pick the range version of this gun, but if you are struggling and running out of ammo, you can go with the ammo version instead. So for our perks, I was looking for our max magazine, so we get a max magazine increase, or not magazine, but max ammo increase of 40%, which is a huge amount. And then another thing I was looking for was, while in heavy stance, fire rate increases by 15%, and also 30% added on to our damage while we are in our heavy stance, which is a significant amount of damage. And then we're ducking down here for an extra 1 meter on our gun, which is, it's with the range that you get on this when you pick the range version with that extra meter, you're getting a lot more range to the damage, to add on to how much damage this gun already does. It really makes it a lot better that way. But like I said, if you are running out of ammo way too much, then you really have to go with the ammo version, and it is still powerful, and it is still utilizing one of its most important tools, which is gaining your contested health back very quickly and letting you really be in close range battles. For our heavy plasma, another great gun. This one I always go with the ammo version, because the way I have mine spec'd out is I like to use the charge shot version of this. There is also a different version where it's more of a single shot version, and I will show you that one as well. But first, for the charge shot version, what you are really wanting to get is, when in heavy stance, your shots charge 10% faster, so you get 20% altogether on that. And then you also get another 20% added on to your charge shot damage. It's very powerful against bosses. It's the best gun he has against bosses. The heavy bolter is next, and then the multi-melta is last against bosses for sure. So very powerful weapon. Now the other version that you can take, if you want to do more of a single shot version instead of a charge shot version, you are looking for this right here. Plasma speed. Projectile speed of plasma weapons increases by 50%. Now with this extra velocity added onto your bullets, you are a lot more accurate, and you can really take advantage of the single shot of this gun. Because when you don't have that, you have a little bit of arc to your shot. So if you are having problems, adjusting with your reticle using the hashes to that arc, you're going to want to go with this version and go with the single shot. And the charge shot is still strong in this in the single shot version. It's just not nearly as strong as if you set it up how I have it out right here with the charge shot version. So both very good. You could set this gun up. I would set it up both ways. I did that, and I ran a few operations in both ways, and this is the way I preferred. But I could definitely see other people preferring the other way instead. And to finish it out, we have the heavy bolter. And what we were looking for on this was a 30% damage increase while we are in our heavy stance, and we were looking for the magazine, or the ammunition increase as well, of 40%. Very, very strong. And I really wanted to dip down here and get this each shot penetrates one additional target. I mean, you're firing so many bullets with this weapon, you are going to be hitting a lot of additional targets, and you also get this 10% more headshot damage right here. So very nice, fun gun to use. This gun, if you can get yourself mid-range and just open up, go in heavy stance and just open up, it is very deadly. You're going to have a ton of range damage by the end of the operation. Yeah, all three of his guns, man, they're very they're great for this class since he does not have a melee option. All three of his guns should really feel super powerful, and it's fun to use all three. Let's take a look at our multi-Melta build. For this gun, it's a very strong gun. It is definitely king of getting you your contested health back and keeping you alive. If you like close quarter combat, this is going to keep you, right in the middle of the fight and always staying high on hit points. So let's take a look how we got our spec'd out here. Now this is weak against bosses, but the other two weapons that we have are very strong against bosses, so that's just kind of a decision. And it's all playstyle thing. If you like to be close and you're going to use the multi-Melta, and if you like to be mid-range and deal a bunch of damage that way, you're going to use the other two weapons instead. So for our multi-Melta, we got multi-kill. Killing 5 or more enemies with one shot from the multi-Melta restores ammo by 1. So you fire into a large group of small enemies, and you're going to just keep your ammo where it was. And it's a very important one for the gun, and it makes sense to take it every time you use it. Next, we have Fortitude. Health increases by 20%. I take this on nearly every build. It's just the higher the difficulties, the more important your health becomes. For this row, we have Overwhelming Power. When Iron Halo is active, all squad members within 10 meters deal 10% more range damage. Now, we're taking this one because not only is it helping our group, it's giving us 10% when our Iron Halo is up, and then it is also giving us 15% range damage when our Iron Halo is down. So I always just feel like I'm always getting 8 damage boosts, no matter if my Iron Halo is up or down. I always have one. But if you wanted to take versatility, after switching weapons, your secondary weapon does 20% more damage. This is also a very good perk, and if you're switching in and out of your primary to your secondary a lot, this will be a lot of extra damage as well. So either one of these, but I prefer the Overwhelming Power. For this one, just so everybody knows, it's called Overcharge, and it says damage from charged. They changed it. It says damage from charged melee attacks increased by 20%. Okay. They must have just changed this with the patch, because it did not. It just said damage from charged attacks increases by 20% before, and a lot of people were confused, thinking this was going to help their plasma gun or something. Okay, so they changed that. That's good. Okay, next up we got additional supplies. Ammo capacity for all squad members' weapons increases by 25%. I take this across the board, no matter what. This is this is a very strong team perk just in the game in general. Next up, Emperor's Protection. When Iron Halo expends all of its energy, one armor segment is restored for all of your squad members. Now, it's giving you one armor segment, but then in addition, it's giving your teammates one armor segment. So, it's a very good perk to take, and I find it to be the strongest in that row. Next up, Field Adjustment. Iron Halo recharges 20% faster, but its durability is reduced by 30%. I like to have it so I can pop my Iron Halo as much as possible, so it's going up and down. I'm regaining my armor. I'm constantly having the 10% ranged, and then the 15% range when it's down from this brute force right here that we take next. So very good combination that I like to run with the Iron Halo right there. And then this one, now if you are communicating with your team, Conversion Field is a very powerful one, and definitely if you have like a bulwark, because you're going to want that banner up as much as possible. So if you're in communication with your team, this is very good. But if you're not in communication with your team and you really don't know when to utilize your Iron Halo to take advantage of this, you're not going to want to use it, because it is giving you no benefit at all. It is only helping your teammates out, because while this is giving them the 50% ability charge, your ability is actually running, so yours is not charging, so you're not getting any effects from this one at all. And with this multi-Melta build, I find I like to take the offensive capability, because I'm always in close, and you're just getting an extra AoE damage added onto your Iron Halo as well. So that one's a preference thing, and if you're playing with friends or something, then this one could be better. This one right here, I find this one to be completely worthless. They need to just take this one out of the game. It's way too situational. But yeah, that is our multi-Melta build. Alright, let's get into our Plasma build and what perks we are switching up on. This one we have Restoration. Killing 10 enemies in rapid succession restores one armor segment. Cooldown is 15 seconds. It's superior to Auxiliary Ammunition just because it is very hard to kill 10 enemies in rapid succession with only your secondary weapon, especially with the heavy not having a melee weapon. That is just, it's very hard to accomplish, so I think this is a better one to take. Next up, we have Thermal Boost. When a ranged weapon is 50% overheated, range damage increases by 15%. Our plasma rifle is reaping the extra damage from this one, but depending on the difficulty you're on, and if you're just having trouble surviving, you're going to have to sacrifice the 15% and go with this. Health increases by 20% instead. Next up, we have Versatility. After switching weapons, your secondary weapon does 20% more damage. I like this for the Plasma build because it seems with the charge shot and how it works and you're overheating, you are constantly switching to your secondary. So I think this one might give you more damage, but if you're staying very close to your squad mates and you know how lethal works and stuff, this one is going to probably be, could possibly be better. Yeah, so either one of these is good. Next up, additional supplies. You know that one. That one's across the board. Emperor's Protection. Iron Halo expends all energy. One armor segment is restored to all squad members. Now, for this row, this is really, you could pick what you want on here. I go with the durability when I'm in like a mid-range build, just because I like the increased durability against the ranged attacks. And then I could just get my, it feels like I can get my shots off longer if I have my bolt gun, or I can get more charge shots off in this case if I have my plasma gun. And then next up, Brute Force. When Iron Halo is in cooldown, range damage increases by 15%. I really like that perk. And for our signature, like I said, I'm not really trying to be close with my my Iron Halo. I'm trying to more use it to block ranged attacks so I can shoot from about mid-range. So this one's probably not going to help me out this much. This perk, signature perk, is useless. And this one, like I said, if you're in communication with your team, this one is very powerful, but it just doesn't help you out. So, but this is the one I take on the Plasma build, and I just try to, you know, use it when I think my team's ability charge is down, or if I'm talking to them, I know it's down, and then I can use it. So that is how I like to spec out my Plasma build. And we're going to finish it out with our Heavy Bolter build. Very similar to the Melta build. The only thing you are switching is I like to take Restoration. Killing 10 enemies in rapid succession restores 1 armor segment. And for our gear, I like to take the increased durability by 20% to our Iron Halo, so I can stay mid-range in my heavy stance longer and really open up on the enemies. Anytime I'm mid-range, I like to take this one, but this is really preference. You could take any one of these. And yeah, that's all that I am really switching up from the Melta build. But this is a very fun gun to use. Like I said, it gives the class a lot of versatility with his weapons in general. And, you know, you're only switching up a few perks here and there just to complement your weapon. But then the weapon is really changing how you are playing the class in general. Alright, so our heavy lethal build that you're going to want to run is right here on the screen, and you are pairing this with the heavy plasma. Very powerful in lethal. Much better than the Melta and the heavy bolter. I ran every build that you've seen in this guide on lethal now, and this build right here paired with the heavy plasma is going to make it the easiest. It's not going to be easy no matter what, because lethal is insane. But I'm telling you, this heavy plasma is super strong. The splash damage and all the aspects about it just really work well for a lethal build. So we'll go into some gameplay, and we will really look at how you are trying to use this gun in lethal, staying alive, keeping your teammates alive, and all of that good stuff. We'll start with a little gameplay with this plasma build on lethal, and really show you how you're utilizing your charge shots and your single shots and different things like that. Obviously, when you see a big group of enemies like that, you are going to charge up and try to deal the mass amount of damage to them as they're standing still. Right here, I went away from my team. I really wanted one of those executions at least, and now I will go back to them, because that's the most annoying part of this whole lethal thing, is trying to stay close enough to your teammates to keep yourself regaining armor, which I think they're going to change. I think that just needs to be a buff instead of a debuff when you're close to your teammates. Maybe give everybody like 10% extra damage when you're all by each other, or 10% damage reduction or something when you're by each other. But the way they got it set up right now, it really makes the game a lot harder to play, and some of the classes kind of can't really play can't play to their strengths. These enraged guys right here, very annoying. They have no knockback, so they are very fast to shoot their sniper rifles like that, so you really have to be careful. If they hit you with one of those, sometimes before you even get out of your knockback animation, they're already hitting you with the second shot and downing you. So really watch out for those guys. This operation right here seems to be one of the easier ones to do on lethal, so just throwing that out there, if this is one you want to try. I'm always running my groups where I'm queuing in with random players. I never wanted to set up a group and like dedicate like times to play, because I really wanted my guides to sort of reflect that player base that is more, I think probably 80% of the player base that is just queuing in the games and playing on their free time. And you know, this way, if I'm doing the same thing, I feel like, you know, I can make better guides focused towards those type of players as well. Oh. Now, I know we get a boss fight in here. Yeah, so you can really see right here how strong this is against. Right there, you see the damage that it does to the Neothrope. But this damage right here, the bosses, or when the Neothrope is down like this, he has a huge damage reduction. I don't know if it's to certain things or what it is. It might only be ranged attacks. But when he's down like that, he has a big damage reduction. As you see, I hit him right there. You see the amount that it took away. This is a very strong gun against bosses, and if you have a tactical on your team, you are going to melt almost all the bosses that appear. So that is another reason why this gun is honestly very useful on lethal. There's so many extremists, there's so many bosses, and this heavy plasma being as good as it is against extremists as bosses, it's just such a benefit to your team. I think the heavy is one of the most important assets to a team right now, with just based on having that gun and the amount of damage they could do to a bunch of heavy enemies and extremists. Let's see if we get one more. No, that was it. So that is how you're going to want to run with this heavy plasma. You're really utilizing the single shot on the smaller enemies. You're utilizing its splash damage. Anytime you see your contested health, you're firing it at the ground at a large group of enemies, and then your contested health is going to fill back up. So that is how you're really using it for survivability. And then you are mostly using it because of its charge shot and just its power, or its ability to just eliminate very heavy enemies and bosses alike. We're going to end our heavy guide with team chemistry. If you're queuing into random games like me, this is how I like to do it. If I get a sniper in my group, I will usually go with my Melta Build, because I know he's trying to stay mid-range as well and do a lot of damage, and if we're both trying to stay mid-range, it doesn't work as well. So if I do not have a sniper in my team, that is when I will go with a mid-range build most of the time. If I think people can keep a lot of the aggro, I will always go mid-range, because I feel like you can do the most damage that way, and it is just most beneficial for your team in general. So they pair best with a bulwark and a tactical. Those are my two favorite to pair with this class. But obviously when you're randomly queuing in, you're not going to get what you want every time, so you're going to have to switch it up. But when you have a tactical and a bulwark, they really keep the aggro off you. You can really stay mid-range, do a bunch of damage. You're taking advantage of the tactical's scan and doing tons of damage when he uses that. And you are using the bulwark to really grab up all the aggro, and you know he's going to keep everything close range to him.